Betsy Jordyn, and I am so excited to bring you today my good friend Dan Weedin. And we have known each other, we just realized this 11 years ago, right, Dan?
11 years ago, we met in a bar and talked about Bon Jovi.
We were at a business training where we were learning how to grow our consulting practices back in the day. And Dan has done amazing things with his business. So he supports small business owners. He helps them in every aspect of the business, plus a lot of emphasis on risk. Is that correct?
A lot of, I would say, risk strategy and emerging risk solutions, which is one of my new brands. That's what I do.
And he's got a great podcast. You want to plug
Thank
your
you.
podcast too?
Unleashed the podcast. You can go to unleashthepodcast.com. You can listen to all the episodes. It's also available on many different platforms. I'll leave it at that. But if you go to unleashthepodcast.com, you'll find me.
Okay, so let me tell you why you need to listen in. If you're a consultant or a coach, or you're thinking about becoming one and you want to figure out how in the world do I take my years of experience and turn it into a business, what can I reasonably expect from all of the ups and downs? I really wanted to bring Dan here because he's been at this for a while. He's been at his business for 15 years and he knows all about it. And I think that there's something about learning from people who've been where we want to go is truly inspirational. And Dan is an inspiration on what he's been able to do with his business. But before we talk about what he's doing now, more specifically, as it relates to how he's growing his business, I want to take you back in time, Dan, if that's okay.
Sure.
Take me back. I want to go back in time to 15 years ago, Dan. And he's working, and what is he doing, and what makes him decide, I think I want to ditch this working for somebody else kind of thing and start my own business? What happened to you?
So I'd been an insurance broker for pretty much all of my career. At that point, it'd been about 15, 16 years that I'd been an insurance broker, and I'd made a good career out of it. In fact, you could say I was comfortable. I was 41 at the time and had two children who were in high school getting ready for college. And I went to my wife and I said, I'm not having fun. In fact, I'm really not having fun. And it really kind of dawned on me that it wasn't the industry, it wasn't the business. It was, I really had grown tired of working for somebody else who was calling the shots, making decisions I might not make, and then earning money for them as opposed to earning money for me. And then the final part was I actually thought there was more I could give, but in the position I was in, it wasn't possible. It's not what they wanted for me. This was actually about a 2-year period. So I make it sound like it happened all overnight. It had really been going on for a couple of years. And I found myself getting to a point that I was not having fun. I was complaining. I wasn't looking forward to working. So when I talked to my wife, Barb, about it, it was like she already knew that. She knew that I wasn't having fun. But the idea was, okay, we have kids in high school. We have a comfortable living. And we're going to go from that to we don't know when you're going to ever get paid again. So that was the big step that had to be taken. But once I came up with the idea of consulting, that using the knowledge that I had gained over all those years in a way to advise people, to help people, the next step was, okay, I'm going to burn the boats and I'm going to move forward. And that's what we did.
So what I heard you say then is it sounds like a little bit of I'm not having fun. Another thing is like, wow, I'm working all these hours and I'm growing somebody else's bottom line was another thing. Third is that you saw that you can make a bigger contribution than from the role that you had currently. And that was like the big things that were kind of going on in you that made you say, I think I want to do something different. Did I hear that right?
You're right. And they kind of piled onto each other because each of those three played a factor in and of themselves. I'm not sure it would have led me to this, but the combination of such and the opportunity of the world we live in today, even in 2005, technology was a major part. I don't know that I could have done this in 1990, for instance. So the availability to work from home and to create this was also there. So the combination all played a part.
So what's interesting is that you, like many of my clients, it is a 2-year journey or a 3 years journey. Sometimes it takes a while to get there. Was there like a moment that catalyzed it for you that you said, you know what, I'm done. This is the moment. Like, did something happen that you said, I really want to do this?
Yeah, it's it's funny that you say that because there was, and I don't know how it happened. I don't know what triggered it, but in my head, I started thinking, I wonder if I can make money consulting somebody in doing this. So I've been selling insurance, but then I started thinking, I had so many, I guess I know what did happen. I had a lot of clients that, not a lot, several clients over the previous 3 or 4 months who left me, not because of me, but because there was a better product. And they'd actually come to me, Betsy, and said, somebody gave me this proposal on commercial insurance. Can you get these? And I said, no, this is a different market. I don't have this company. And they thanked me for my honesty. And I actually had to advise them, it'd be better off if you went here. It's a better policy. It's less expensive. It's just better. And then I something hit me and I said, I wonder if I can make money doing that. I wonder if I can make a living advising people who have no idea. And the only reason I didn't have them as clients anymore wasn't because of me. My relationship was so strong that they felt confident in coming to me. So that was there was probably that moment in time where it's like, okay, I think I can do this. And from that point, it accelerated from the 2 years prior. Within 30 days, I had a corporation. I announced that I was moving forward.
So it's interesting. It's like for a lot of people, the discontent goes on for a while and there's like a defining moment. And for some people, it's like they lost their job or something happened to their job. But for you, you had some sort of vision that you're like, I can make this thing happen. And so then you did it. So then you also said that for you, a big part of it was obviously getting Barb on board. Was it easy, or is there something that you need to communicate that you would recommend to other people around how do you get your loved ones on board who are worried around how are you going to replace your salary?
Yeah, I'll say for me, it was easy. Barb and I were high school sweethearts. We had been together. See, we've been together now. We've been together almost 40 years. So even at that time, we'd been together 25 years. She didn't want me unhappy. Now I had to kind of promise her we wouldn't starve. Yeah, but she trusted me, and I appreciate that. In fact, today she's working with me. That's another part of the story for
Awesome.
maybe another day. But I had to kind of promise, yeah, I'll make this work. I'm going to find a way. That's not this. Everybody's in a different situation, and so that is a really important conversation, because being an entrepreneur, for all intents and purposes, unless you have some other situation, turns off the money spigot.
Mm-hmm.
And you may have some savings. For me, I had money that I was going to be getting from the agency I was at for 3 years. And actually it was enough to cover for 3 years to cover the mortgage, which I thought was a bonus because I wasn't even expecting that. So it gave me even more confidence. But you still have to eat. You still have to have lights on. You get kids going to school. So that conversation with your spouse, your significant other, it's an important one, because the money potentially will stop. There's ways to accelerate that, but stuff happens, like pandemics and or recession that both you and I were consultants through no fault of our own. Stuff happens. So you have to be prepared for that, and you have to be very honest and candid up front. And I think Barb and I probably we didn't know what we were going into. We just had gone into a lot of unknowns together in the past, and we were willing to do it again. I'm not sure we knew exactly what was going to happen. Maybe we wouldn't have done it, but I'm glad we did.
you bring up the important thing about the unknown, because that is what keeps a lot of people stuck, is that fear of the unknown. And it doesn't sound like the fear of the unknown or the fear, can I make this thing work? It doesn't sound like that was a big tripping point for you. And how did you get to that point where fear, in any case, scenario, fear of money, fear of making it work, how did you get to a place where you weren't afraid?
I don't, I don't want to sound any, I'll put it this way. I trust myself implicitly. I trusted myself, and I didn't look at it as much of a fear. There's a small fear of the unknown, but I was actually more excited about what the opportunity was. That was not even close. The defining difference was, oh, I can't wait. I can't wait. I don't know what's out there, but I can't wait. And so I would say to anybody listening, you have to trust yourself so much that you're willing to put it all on yourself. And that was part of the reason of the switch. You mentioned that I didn't like working for somebody else because I had to trust somebody else. And I trust myself way more than I trust anybody else. And you have to have that level of confidence to go into something like this excited rather than scared.
That is such a powerful thought around trusting yourself. Like that sounds like, because you trusted yourself, then Barb was able to trust you. And
Right.
then your future clients can trust you because you trust yourself. And I wonder how much the fear that so many people get riddled with is they don't trust themselves that they can manage through all of the difficulties.
Well,
And that,
and this is, I don't mean to, this is part of the language because I'm sorry for interrupting you. You know me
oh no,
well
it's
enough.
fine. No,
I'm
no,
willing
go
to
for
do
it.
that. It's all about language to yourself. So if your significant other says to you or asks you, will we have enough money to survive? If the answer is, I hope so, that's a bad answer.
Right.
The answer has to be yes. How do you know? I don't, but I will. I am, it's that level of confidence. That's who follows, from a leadership perspective, even inside, there might be a little bit of doubt. You're going to project, yes, we are going to be fine. We're going to be okay. We have, and hopefully we had a track record at that point that, yeah, that we're going to be fine. But that's the type of language, and you have to believe it yourself in order to confidently and boldly say that to somebody else who's got a stake in it.
I was thinking about, as you said, trusting yourself. Like I remember the first time I landed my first international client. I'm going in another country. I'm going into a brand new client. I didn't meet anybody. I landed this big contract with a company in a different part of the world. Never met them before, in an industry I never worked for. And I remember feeling like, oh gosh, like you had that like, oh crap factor, like I had that when I walked in. And then it's like, no, I trust myself. I know what I'm doing. And I was able to talk myself very quickly. Like it only lasted a minute. And I think as I hear you talking about it, is it sounds like that, trusting yourself probably contributed to your career all along the way. Is like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I know how to do this. And you just keep drawing back on it. And I think that's what's important for high achieving people who have a big career is you got a result before, you'll get it again. It's just in this whole new environment. The other thing I want to follow up with you on is something that you said is you burn the bridges. I've heard you use that phrase before.
I
And we
burned the
talked about,
boats. Actually,
or burn
burned
the
the
boats,
boats. Yeah.
burn the boats. We talked about that before because you and I had a conversation about how important commitment is to your success and how that's the defining factor. What does it mean to burn the boats to you?
So for those that don't know, I don't, it could be mythology, but the story is when Cortez came to the New World, they burned the boats, and he said to his people, we have no way to get home. We're going to have to make this work. While safety nets may sound okay, and maybe they are, I kind of said, I'm not going back. I'm planting my stake in this. I have no boat to go back, so I have to make it work. And for me, I think I think you have to have. I have to have. I'll just speak for me. I had to have that. Nope, there's no plan B. There's
Mm-hmm.
no plan B. It's plan A, and one way or another, I'm going to have to make it work. And I think part of part of this, and I don't know if you're going to ask this question, is while you have a lot of confidence, you also have to educate yourself on what's new. I'd never been a consultant. I needed to learn, and I needed to learn fast. And so that's, having that level of having some coaching, mentoring, accountability, doing your own research. I learned very quickly that if I was going to burn the boats and had no place to go, I'd better get educated. I better understand what it took, because I was doing something different than what I was doing before.
Yeah, so you equipped yourself. So you were able
Yes. Yeah.
to burn the boats because you equipped yourself, and you
Right.
weren't. A lot of the clients I work with, they struggle with that. I should already know how to do this myth. And so they have a hard time asking for help. And it sounds like for you, it's like, hey, I don't know how to do this. No big deal. I'll just go get the help. I'll go get the
Well, and
support.
I bet most of your clients are experts on the
Yes.
methodology of, and you and I have spoken about this in the past, the methodology. They're experts. They could write the books on what, and maybe they do, on what they do. But being a consultant and acquiring new clients is a completely different skill set. It's a completely different skill set than the methodology. That's what you had to learn. And even though I had lived in sales, this was a different agreement. This was a different transaction, because when I was selling insurance, everybody needed it. It was
Right.
required of them. Everybody didn't need my consulting. They didn't have a budget for me. And so that all of a sudden becomes a completely different level of marketing, of relationship building, of trust. And that's what makes it different, I think, for a lot of consultants, probably many that you're coaching yourself, is you may be the world's greatest technology expert or greatest human resources expert or whatever. But if you can't influence somebody to hire you, you don't get to use it.
Well, what I say is that kind of like what got you here in your career isn't going to get you there as it relates to a business owner. That you almost have to unlearn everything that you did about how you put your resume out to go find
Right.
a job, because the role that we want as a consultant or a coach is not on any org chart. You have to find the role that you want, position yourself to go after it, which is why I call myself a positioning expert. Is you got to position yourself and go after it, and you have to proactively advocate for your contribution, which is really different than I apply for a job.
Right.
It's a totally different kind of thing. But I think that goes to the point where you and I have this in common, is that we get excited about learning the new skills. Like I love learning all of the stuff I have around digital marketing and how you make things work. And, whatever next I can learn is what I'm more excited about versus whatever I've mastered in the past. That's why I keep reinventing myself. So you've been in business now for 15 years. If you were going to look at the span of your business career, because you did it, you were able to not only replace your salary, but grow it tremendously.
Mm-hmm.
So you've done a lot of things right along the way. So I'd love to hear what you would say are the best practices. And I'm sure if you're like me, you have a lot of expensive worst practices as well. So if you could share a little bit about your best practices and
Funny,
your
the worst
practices.
practices come to mind before the best.
Okay, then start with, so what are the worst practices?
I remember, because when I talk to clients, I'll say, this happened to me, don't let it happen to you. I'll just give you a couple of both, and we can go from there. One of the biggest mistakes that I made early on was I often wasn't talking to the right person. I would have conversations, great conversations. They loved me, but they couldn't cut a check, right? Even though I was working with small and medium-sized businesses, because it was in the insurance realm, I might be talking to the person in the organization who was in charge of insurance or in charge of risk management. And they loved that I could help them, but they had no ability to hire me. And then when we got to the point that, I need to get approval, well, that other person did not have the same objectives or the same desire. And so it sounds like I should have learned it right away, but that's a slow process. Are you talking to the right person? The other thing that was that took a long time too. These are not quick fixes, but one of the things that was really important for me was to actually quantify the value that I had.
Mm.
Because in my head, it sounds good. It sounds really good if I say, I'm going to give you increased peace of mind. Good. I'm going to make you more confident. Good. But what does that mean to my bottom line? What does that mean to my profitability? And it took a long time, but I had to get to a point where I actually put numbers to it, percentages to it, increases and decrease, whatever that number is. That became an important part of every proposal I had moving forward, because people want to see, well, how do we quantify this? So those are two areas that might even be a best practice. That may turn into a best practice. Is in order to give your value, you may have tremendous value, but it has to, depending on who your market is, there has to be both qualitative and quantitative results and values. That's a best practice right from the start. And I would say one here, that's a quantitative one. Here's a qualitative best practice that came out of, I think all of these came out of failures, Betsy. I think at some point, all of these came out of something where I failed. You have to make sure that you're always your best advocate. Even if you have a significant other that is pulling for you, the words that you say to yourself, the self-talk, this is a hard job. This is a hard career to have. It's a rewarding, but it's hard. And so there's a lot of times where you can get down on yourself. So probably the best thing is that you have to cut yourself some slack. You have to be able to be your best advocate. And it's okay to be down a little bit, but you can't let it linger. You got to go on to the next step. One quick note, if you don't mind me telling just a quick anecdote. I'm a golfer. And I actually just recently, even though I've been golfing for 43 years, I still go to a coach once in a while to get some lessons. And I was voicing my frustration that I was having some bad shots. And I was trying to fix them. And he said something to me that turned into a business thought. He said, look, it's okay to have a bad shot, and it's okay to be upset about it for a moment. He goes, but if you're trying to fix that bad shot with the next one, you can't. He goes, you know how to make a good shot. Focus on that. Focus on what it takes to make a good shot, not what you did bad before. And I would tell everybody, focus on what you know it looks like to have a good communication style. Focus what you know how it looks like to build relationships, to build marketing campaigns, to build processes. Don't worry on the mistakes you made. Focus on what you know the right thing looks like.
Well, it's almost like you just have to shake off the mistake and then start over.
Which is not easy.
Right.
It's hard. That's I guess the one thing. It's not easy, but there's a mental toughness and maybe more than discipline. That's where the mental toughness comes in, is you have to wipe that away and boldly move forward. And that's a hard thing to do. And it's something that I would recommend to all of your people, to practice that mental toughness.
One of the things I talk about with a lot of my clients around how will you achieve results as a consultant. And a lot of people think what's like, well, I'm here and here's my goal and it's going to be a straight shot. And I say, no, it's more like an ice skater. You move side to side. That's how you move forward. It's like you're constantly pivoting. And every mistake you make is a learning opportunity, because like, well, I put that message out. It's like, well, that didn't work, but you got farther along because now you know that doesn't work. So right. Then you get to move on, and everything is a learning. Now we could say that 15 years later, that we've been in business, but it's hard at first because, yep. You're used to getting success in a particular way, and you're not used to failing, as spectacularly as we might do in our own business.
But Betsy, isn't that like life? I mean, that's like life. I mean, I think being an entrepreneur is so much like life, because we have things thrown at us that, again, whether it's a pandemic or a recession, and that's part of life. And I think everybody's equipped to be a good entrepreneur as long as they have the coaching, the mentoring, the love of education, and the resiliency. Anybody can make a really good consultant if they have those characteristics.
So would you say that those were the best practices, is that you got your mindset straight, you
Yeah.
invested in mentoring, or all those things, the best practices
Yes.
that you would,
Yes.
Is there anything you would add to that list around best practices?
I guess I would add this: be ready to. You just mentioned the word pivot. I look different now than I did in March. I made some changes to my business because I looked at myself and said, "What happens if I can never leave my house anymore, for whatever reason?" And so I made some. Do not be afraid to try to innovate. In fact, it's a requirement. You must consistently be looking to be innovative, to try new things, to fail at them, to learn from them, and to keep reinventing yourself. So that would probably be the other best practice I'd put in there.
So as a wrap-up question, so I've got
Mm-hmm.
one last wrap-up question,
Okay.
if that's cool with you.
Of
All right,
course.
so if you were going to go back in time, and we're talking to 15 years ago Dan, or even 17 years ago Dan, and you were going to say one thing to him that would encourage him at that particular time of your life, now with everything that you know, what would you tell him that would encourage him throughout the journey and to let him know what's in store for him?
Wow, that's a good question. That's a really good question. I think I would go back in an encouraging way and say, there's nothing that's going to happen in front of you that is going to kill you. I mean, from a business standpoint, you can survive anything. You just, trust yourself even more than you trust yourself now. Have confidence, have fun, and stay in the moment. Don't worry about things in the future. Stay in the moment, and this is a golf thing. Trust your swing, trust yourself. And even though I said I did those things, there's times that I didn't as much as I could have. So I think I would go back and say, hey, stay the course. You're fine.
Wow. Powerful, powerful words. And I love how you wrapped it back up with what you started with, is that this business and staying in it is all about trusting yourself and trusting yourself to pivot, stay resilient, and that you have what it takes and you can make this happen. That's awesome.
Thank you.
Well, I am so grateful for this time. And I know it was super helpful for a lot of people who are listening in. If they want to get to know you a little bit more, you have Unleashed behind you. Do you want to just quickly explain that?
Yeah, Unleashed is a brand that I came out with probably 5-6 years ago. In fact, I actually registered, trademarked the word, and it's really kind of a mindset of unleashing yourself. I find a lot of people, regardless of the type of business, are fearful, and they chain themselves to their, they chain themselves to their fear. And I have a Jack Russell Terrier that loves to be unleashed. And so Captain Jack was and Bella were my go-tos on unleashing. So it's really about unleashing your mindset and getting rid of the fear and being excited about going through the fence to find out what's on the other side. And so that's where Unleashed came from. I also have a brand called Emerging Risk Solutions. So I do a lot of work around risk strategy. But my website's danweedin.com. And I'm Dan at danweedin.com. I'd love to talk to anybody.
And you do have your book there, because your book does deal a lot with that mindset. So if somebody needs some quick wins around the mindset and getting to the place where they can trust
Unleashed
themselves.
Leadership. Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dan. And I really, really appreciate your time. And thank you all for listening in. I'll see you soon.